I'm Judy Zelina. This is the Millcreek Government Channel. The Highmark Caring Place, a center for grieving children, adolescents, and their families, is a safe place where these grieving children and families could come together and be with others who understand what they are going through. The Highmark Caring Place provides peer support where the children who attend come to know that they are not alone in their experiences and feelings. In addition to these peer support groups, the Caring Place provides educational programs, consultation services, presentations, and resources for schools and other professionals in the community who work with children. The Caring Place continually works to raise awareness of the needs of grieving children and how to respond. Joining us today on the program is Christy Nosich. She's the program manager for the Caring Place. Christy, it's so good to have you on the show.
Good morning, Judy. How are you today?
Good, and it was good to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you as well.
What I'd like to first talk about is maybe some of our viewers are not familiar with the Caring Place. Okay. If you can give us a little bit of history of the Caring Place and how long you've been actually here in Erie.
Sure. So back in the mid-90s, believe it or not, we've been around for a long time. And the Caring Place really came about because two things were happening at the same time. A group of nurses down at Children's Hospital had realized that there were a lot of children losing their siblings due to cancer and illnesses and things like that. At the same time, our executive director of the Caring Foundation, now this was in the early 90s, had lost a child suddenly. And when he started looking for resources for children, there was nothing around. And these nurses kind of approached Highmark and said, there's nothing here for these children. And it was through those joint efforts together that they started an adventure, I guess you could call it, where they went across the country to look to see what grieving centers were out there. And in 1997, the inception of the Caring Place in Pittsburgh began. And we have been in Erie now for 18 years, since May of 2001.
And I think it is absolutely marvelous, and I know I'll say this numerous times throughout the program, that we are so lucky to have you right here in our own backyard. And viewers, when you hear some of the programs that they have and the different focuses and their mission statement, you'll see why we're thrilled to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
You have an interesting logo. What is the meaning behind that?
You know, I think the logo is probably one of my favorite stories about the Caring Place. It's a broken heart and butterfly. And quite honestly, a little boy developed our logo. There was a little boy, he was about 8 or 9, and it was the beginning of the Caring Place. He was coming to the Caring Place because his brother had died. And one day he was sitting in group and he drew the broken heart. And he wrote his brother's name in that broken heart and said, my heart's broken because my brother died. Oh. And as he was coming to the Caring Place, the volunteers were sitting with him, and he said, you know, can I see that picture again? And he drew a butterfly right on top of near the heart. And he said, you know, since I've been coming here, I kind of have hope again. I hope that my heart is not always going to be broken. And that truly, I mean, how wonderful an 8-year-old little boy to be able to say something so profound about his grief. And it really is the essence of our program. It is really about letting people know that life can go on. There can be hope after that broken heart.
That is a beautiful story.
Yeah,
it really is. I did not know that
about
the logo.
Yeah, I love it.
I know there's a connection with Caring Place and Fred Rogers.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Mr. Rogers, he is just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, what an amazing man. We were so lucky to have him. He was part of he was an honorary chairman of our board until he died in 2003.
Was he?
He was. He was.
Wow.
And really, you know, Mr. Rogers is from Pittsburgh. And
yes.
He became very involved with the Caring Foundation, Highmark Caring Foundation, many years ago because the steel mills were closing down. And he was a Presbyterian minister, and at that time he sought out Highmark and said, these children are not going to have insurance anymore. And so that is how the CHIP program actually started, was the efforts of Mr. Rogers, the Presbyterian ministers down there, as well as the efforts of Highmark.
I had no idea.
Yes, and so he advocated for children. And then when the Caring Place started their efforts, who better than Mr. Rogers to be able to tell us what children need? He made difficult subjects easy for children to talk about through his efforts. And really, a lot of our model, a lot of the way that we speak to children, a lot of the way that we developed our program was all based on Mr. Rogers' consultation with us.
Oh, really?
So he was with us on the opening of the Caring Place here in Erie in 2001.
He's a wonderful role model.
He is, absolutely.
He really is.
Yeah.
Now, the Caring Place, what actually is your focus? I know we're talking about children, but
Sure.
The whole focus of the Caring
So
Place.
we are a child-centered program,
Okay.
but it's family-based.
All right.
So really, you do need to have children to come to our program, but we do work with the families. So families and children will come to the program, and I should mention that it is completely free.
Oh,
I think
wonderful.
that's so important for people to realize that
Yes.
we are sponsored by Highmark. You don't have to have Highmark insurance to be a part of our program, but it is also a completely free program. And so families come to the Caring Place. We serve them dinner because we know that sometimes sitting down at the table with that missing chair, it's a reminder that that person's not there anymore. So we give dinner to our families when they come, and that's really important for them. And then the families come together. The children go into support groups. At the same time, we run the adult support groups. So we know that in order for those adults to be there to care for their children, they need to address their grief as well. So that's why we run at the same time simultaneous groups.
First off, to become a part of these programs, is it just a matter of picking up the phone and calling you?
It is, and that is the biggest challenge because it's hard to make that phone call because you're taking accountability. You're saying that my child is suffering, is dealing with a grief. I'm dealing with grief.
Right.
So that phone call is one of the hardest things.
It is.
But it really is about just making that phone call. Someone will talk to our family services coordinator, do an intake assessment to really help you figure out if the Caring Place program is right for you. We want to make sure groups are not for everybody, and we want to make sure that we help you understand what we do and help you understand if this is what is going to help your family.
When should we make that phone call?
You know, we have families that call us the day of the funeral.
Okay.
We have families that call us before the funeral, and we have families that call us years after the funeral.
Okay.
So it really does not matter when you call. It's never too late. Sometimes we have families that call us they call us right away, and we get them established with our program with the supports, and so you can call at any time.
You know what, Christy? We're talking about grieving adolescents and families, but actually, let's talk about that. What is grief?
Oh, yeah. Grief is that just expression of loss, and it is anybody grieves, and they grieve in very different ways. I think what people misunderstand is grief can look very different for lots of different people, and it can look different for adults and children. It could be anger, it could be sadness, it could be frustration and being overwhelmed. It could be moving on with your life and pretending everything is okay. Everybody handles that grief very differently.
Now, there are different stages, aren't there, of grief?
So that's interesting that you bring that up because stages of grief is really the way that we don't look at things at the Caring Place. We like to talk about it more of a spiral. And the reason that we talk about that is we really believe that when someone is dying and dealing with grief, that you don't go through those stages, the denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance state. You don't go through those stages because that insinuates that it's over then. And so for the spiral of grief, like we like to teach, is grief comes and goes. At sometimes life is going a little bit easier for you. And then other times that grief comes back. You might hear a song on the radio and it could be years later and that song is like a reminder of that person that you lost and it brings it right back to the front. And we know through children's development that as they begin to get older, it means very differently a 4-year-old who doesn't have their dad and then a 16-year-old who doesn't have their dad. That looks very differently. And so grief comes and goes throughout that lifespan, and it's learning how to live on that spiral with those triggers that come back and forth.
That's an interesting concept because you always hear. That's why I asked about the stages of grief, and everyone talks about them. And I think you're right. I would say, well, okay, I'm at this stage, so I'm really getting towards the end, or I haven't reached this stage. It's, what's wrong with me?
Right. We will have people call us to the caring place and say, I'm kind of in the anger stage. I just need to get to that acceptance stage so that can be done. And that, I wish it worked that way, but what we know is that it doesn't. And why we try to let people know that is because so many times, years later, families will say to us, I'm still struggling. It's been 4 years since my daughter's death. People tell me I should be getting on with my life. And we're here to tell you that, no, you don't go on without feeling sadness again, or anger or frustration. You have a different relationship with that person now that they're gone, but it's okay to still feel sad. And that's really important to us.
That is important.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the difference between children's grief and adults' grief. It's different, isn't it?
It's very different. For adults, they understand grief. When somebody dies, they know what that means for their life.
Right.
It hits them like a ton of bricks. We know what that means. We know what that means for our future. We know what it means for our present. For children, and this is what is so confusing, so many times people will say, their children are doing fine. And it's because they're not grieving like an adult is. For children, their grief hits them almost like a little brick hits them at a time. So if I have a brick wall and I throw that brick at you, it kind of hits you and then you're okay. And then another brick comes and another brick comes. And eventually it hits the children, but it takes much longer. And so their grief looks so differently than adults' grief. And that is why so many times people think like, well, my children are fine. Children are really those forgotten mourners. People forget that children, just because they're not expressing grief the way adults do, doesn't mean that they're not grieving. At a funeral home, you'll see kids running around and playing games and goofing around. It doesn't mean they're not grieving. It just means that they're protecting themselves right now.
And don't you think in some cases the children may be afraid to even tell mom or dad that they are sad, because mom and dad are so sad to begin with. So if they tell them that they feel bad and they're hurting, they're going to make mom and dad sad again.
Yes, we hear that from kids at the caring place all the time. We will have kids at the caring place that are talking in their grief rooms about their grief, and they're sharing their sadness or their frustration, their anger, and they will say, we don't tell mom, we don't tell dad, I don't tell grandma, because I don't want them to feel sad again.
What are some of the questions as I'm going through the process and I'm grieving? And, I'm going months along. What are some of the questions I might be, asking myself and wondering if I'm normal or okay?
That's one of our famous questions is, am I going crazy? And, that's what we will hear from families all the time. I feel like I'm crazy. And yeah, you are. It does feel like you're going crazy because there's a whirlwind. You're trying to function on an everyday basis and trying to take care of work and bills and your children and things like that. And so often we keep ourselves so busy during the day so that we don't have to think about it. And then what our families will tell us is at nighttime, they will, climb into bed and it hits them all. And then they can't sleep and they cry at night and they sit in their tears because they just try to keep themselves busy. And so often we will tell people when they come to the caring place that it almost feels like things are getting worse for a little bit because we're helping you talk about those things.
Got it.
And so families will come to the caring place and they'll say to us, I feel like I'm getting worse. And it's really because we're helping you talk about that.
And you're not burying it, keeping it buried inside.
Exactly. And we know that you have to talk about it to kind of work through that grief.
I agree with you.
You can't bury it.
Christy, how does a parent or any adult know when their child might need help after a death?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really think is important to know is so many times people think that they have to come to the caring place because their child is struggling with the death, okay? And yes, that's true. We have kids that come to the caring place because they're sad and they're struggling. But we have kids that come to the caring place and families come to the caring place because someone in their life died and they miss them. We don't do therapy and counseling at the caring place. It's all about peer support. So it's about bringing families together who are struggling because someone in their life is gone. Now, there are some things to look for, kids that have some complicated grief. And sometimes that's when there's a trauma involved with the
Right.
death. Sometimes that can be really hard when depression starts to hit, when a child is not able to have happy moments in their life again. So through our assessments, we're all therapists there, we're all clinicians, so we help families figure out what's going on with their children to see if they need additional supports besides the caring place.
Okay, you have peer support groups.
Yes.
Let's talk about these.
Yes. So what would you like to know?
Well, is it just the children that attend?
Yeah, so really it's children and families that come, they have dinner together, and then the children go off into their groups, okay? In the group rooms,
they go off in groups. Do you?
yes, we break them down into
okay.
ages.
All right.
So we have a preschool room, an elementary school room, middle school, and high school.
Okay.
So we break the children down based on their ages to be with their peers. In those rooms, kids talk about their feelings, they talk about their memories, they talk about how to cope with the death, they talk about the changes in their life that has happened. And they do that over many, many sessions, 10 sessions together. We do crafts, we do games. It's not like just sitting around this table and just talking with each other. We do all kinds of things to help the kids talk about difficult subjects.
How often are the peer support
Yeah,
groups?
so we run 6 groups a year.
Okay.
And every group is either every week or every other week, and
Okay.
it's about 10 times
Okay.
that the families will meet. After those 10 times, if families feel like they need to continue with us, we have something called an ongoing group where they can continue to come with us. So we have
Okay.
families that are with us for a couple years.
Is there a waiting list, or like if I call, will you be able to work with me right
Yeah,
then and
so
there?
so
or-
many times people think there is a waiting list. What happens is our groups are closed. So we work with several families in a way. We take phone calls, and as we're taking all those phone calls, it feels like a waiting list because we're waiting for a group of families together to
Okay.
form that next group.
Okay, you provide resources and presentations for the schools.
Yes.
What does this involve?
Yeah, so our schools are our biggest referral source,
Are
as
they?
you can imagine.
Well, I
That's
would
where the
imagine
kids are.
the teachers and
So,
counselors.
And what we have now done is we've expanded our programming. We know that not all children can get to us for various reasons, whether it's distance, whether it's adults not able to get us. So we are now taking our model into the schools, and we are providing grief groups in the schools.
Oh, what a wonderful
Yes,
idea.
throughout the community,
Yes.
whether it's in Millcreek, in the city of Erie, down in Oil City, Meadville, Northeast. We're all around the community providing these support groups in the schools now.
That is
We're
fantastic.
also providing supports and education for children, because what we know is so many times people don't know what to say and how to support their friends after someone has died. So we're going into the classrooms now and teaching kids how to support their friends after someone has died in their life.
Okay, let's talk. We're sort of winding down towards the
Yeah,
end, but here's
sure.
a subject I really want to talk about: Children's Grief Awareness Day.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Oh, we just celebrated our 10th anniversary of Children's Grief Awareness Day. It was a small program that started right here in Erie, in Ridgefield Elementary School.
Right in Millcreek.
Right in Millcreek, yes. A group of Ridgefield Elementary students said to us, "Why don't you have a special day for children that are grieving?" And it was their thoughts that sparked an international movement.
It's now international.
It's international movement. It's always the Thursday before Thanksgiving because it's the start of that holiday season, which we know can be difficult for
Yes.
grieving families.
Yes.
And it has become international, and it has become such a movement to let people know that we don't have to pretend that grief is not there. It's a way of letting people and advocating for those grieving children, letting people know that you can talk about your grief. It's like death is that taboo subject, but it happens to everybody. And through Children's Grief Awareness Day, it has really sparked this movement where you can talk about your grief and let people know that I miss this person.
Aw.
Yeah, it's an amazing day.
Now, do you do something special at the Children's Place that day?
Yeah, so at the Caring Place, we always have an open house for our families and some of our community partners, but we partner with so many people in the community schools. It's about wearing blue that day, so I expect to see you in blue that
I will
day.
be in blue the Thursday
The
before
Thursday before
Thanksgiving,
Thanksgiving.
everybody.
Yes, everyone should wear blue. And it's really, schools do assemblies, businesses sell blue things to sponsor us. The community gets on board. The mayor just recently became involved with us and let me speak at one of his engagements. So we have the community has embraced Children's Grief Awareness Day, and people celebrate it all around.
Well, I'm glad to learn more about it and to let our viewers know too
Absolutely.
exactly what's involved. Now, volunteers are so important to your organization, aren't they?
They are the heart of our program.
Are they?
We only have 5 staff that work at the Caring Place.
And the rest are volunteers?
Over 200.
Oh my gosh.
Over 200 volunteers, and so many times people think that we don't need volunteers, but we do. We need volunteers tremendously. We have volunteers that help serve food, that greet our families, that work on our quilts, that are in the kids' rooms, that are in the adult rooms. So we rely on our volunteers because 5 staff could not do everything that we do.
Now, do I have to have a counseling or psychology background?
No, we have volunteers that are stay-home moms, that are retired school teachers, that work at GE, that work at Rite Aid Pharmacy. We have that work at Giant Eagle. We have volunteers all over the place, and you do not have to have a degree. We train you to be able to be in those rooms to provide that support.
Is there an age requirement?
21.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. What about a time commitment? If I call you and say I'd like to volunteer,
yes.
Is there a time commitment?
Yes. So there's 26 hours of training that we put you through.
Okay.
Okay. And we will have we have a training that's getting ready to start in late August. So if you are interested in volunteering, please contact us. But it's 26 hours of training, and we feed you, of course. That's important to us.
Food is always good.
Food is always good. And then what we ask you to do is to commit to one group a year.
Okay.
And so that would be 8 or 10 nights.
Okay.
So one group a year we ask you to commit to. Many of our volunteers do more than that.
I would imagine
Yes.
they do.
We have so many special events that we run, so we have volunteers that are constantly jumping in and helping us with things, but we do ask for one group a year.
Do you have different annual events?
Oh, well, we have Children's Grief Awareness Day.
Right.
We have quilt dedications
Okay.
that families do. We partner with the community so that tonight, actually, I am getting ready to take a bunch of our families to Backbeard at the Erie Playhouse. And the Erie Playhouse partners with us and did a grant, and we are able to take over 50 of our family members to the Erie Playhouse tonight.
That is
so
wonderful.
We offer special things like this all the time through the community.
Wonderful. Now, why do you think it is important to raise awareness for grieving teens and children?
Because it's taboo. It's still taboo. Children and families and teenagers think that they're the only ones dealing with a death. We hear that they're sad, that they're angry, they're frustrated, but more than anything, what we hear from our families is that they feel alone, that nobody else understands what they're going through. And so to advocate for those children, it's good to let them know that we're here for you, and there is a place that cares about you and supports you and wants to be there along your grief journey.
That is wonderful. How can we help you?
By advocating.
Okay.
By advocating, letting people know we do so many outreach things like this today, and there are still so many people that still don't know about the Caring Place. So letting people know that the Caring Place exists and referring people to us.
Well, I will, because I think you do an absolute wonderful job.
You.
Christy, I am so thrilled that you joined us on the program today to let our viewers know the different programs that you have and also the help that is available with your organization. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here in Erie.
We're so glad to be here.
Viewers, if you're interested in volunteering, have any questions, please feel free to give them a call. Check out the website. Thank you for tuning into the Millcreek Government Channel. Until next time, have a wonderful day.